Hi, I'm Greg Schaefer, and welcome to the virtual CISO moment. I've got Mike Rastigue here with me today. Mike, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
So I'd like to hear a little bit about you and your background. I understand that you are very heavily into cyber insurance, cyber risk, and all of that, which is an area that we really haven't talked about on this podcast yet. So I'm really excited about this. But yeah, let's hear a little bit about yourself.
So right now I lead the cyber solutions team for Crum Forster. We're an insurance company. I'm not quite an insurance underwriter, not quite like a claims attorney. I sit somewhere in between, doing sort of more the technical end of both of those. My path here was certainly not very directed and is a little bit meandering. The really short version is I, like pretty much everyone else in this field, I got into technology when I was really young. I had a Commodore 64 and my first computer. Built my first computer when I was about 11 or 12 years old because my friend's dad was an engineer and got tired of us stealing his CAD machine to play video games on. So he sort of bribed us like, hey, I'll buy new parts for a computer and teach you how to build one if you leave mine alone. So that sort of kicked off the lifelong interest. But yeah, the short version is I went to school, started working in help desk, went home one summer and accidentally started up my own MSP. You know what? I'm gonna
an accidental entrepreneur.
Yeah,
awesome.
I had some friends of family that wanted, hey, I need you to fix my computer, and that turned into fix my business's computer, and that turned into fix my friend's business's computer. And yeah, I just decided to roll with that. So I didn't graduate, and I just kind of spun up the MSP for a few years. And eventually I like the IT and the technology end of things, but I was no good at running a business. So it eventually got to the point where I was either going to have to step back and lead the company, or there's just no way to scale it. So I decided to wind that down, went back, finished my degree. At that point, went to law school. I was going to be an intellectual property attorney, and was actually studying for the patent bar when I kind of fell into, like everyone else in the insurance industry, family, friends, or something like that. Nobody aims for insurance.
Accidentally, kind of like the MSP, right?
Yeah. So I wound up just kind of stumbling my way in here, and happened to be a new insurance broker with an IT and security background right at the time that cyber insurance was becoming a thing. It was just serendipity. So moved around a little bit, went to left insurance to go work SecOps for a little bit, thinking, hey, I'm going to keep my skills sharp. It's a hard challenge. Wound up finding my way back into insurance. So.
Well, and cyber insurance, of course, is such a moving target field. It's you have so many challenges with regards to both determining the underwriting and also helping small and mid-sized businesses with everyone's goal of trying to make them as secure as possible, so that you don't actually have a breach, and you don't have I was about to say a need for cyber insurance. That's not a need for a claim. That's probably the better way to say it, which is really what we're all striving for. But so we've been involved with Net Diligence and their e-risk hub for several years. And that's really how I first came upon to learn about Crum Forster, and also as a part of getting ready for this podcast, learning a little bit about the Cyber Ready product that you all have out there, which I kind of looked into a little bit, but could you explain that a little bit more for like a layman, particularly myself? Like, think of me like, cyber risk for dummies in insurance.
So I guess here's the real challenge, and I'll get into a little bit of the why, but the macro issue here is cyber risk inherent. We're inherently insuring a volatile risk. It changes. It moves faster than other traditional risks that we insure. Things like your general liability, which is somewhat pejoratively called slip and fall insurance. Every business has it. Your property insurance against things like fires and hurricanes and earthquakes. We are, as an industry, very well versed in doing that sort of thing. Like, if you look at property insurance, we have hundreds of years of weather and loss and natural catastrophe data that informs the way that we understand that risk. Well, cyber insurance, depending on who you talk to, yeah, there are things like cyber insurance back in the 90s. It really didn't morph into sort of its modern form until about 2015 in the wake of some, I'm not going to name names, but
We know them.
very high profile data breaches that made corporate America sort of sit up and go, oh, whoa, this isn't just jargon that we throw at the IT department and say, solve this. There's like real risk here that we need to manage.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a rapid evolution of coverage, and where every year, because this is a new revenue stream without a lot of historical loss data, what's happening is it was a buyer's market. So every year you went in, the underwriting got easier, you got more coverage for less money. And this sort of just became this like almost nuisance coverage. Like you bought it to check a box on a contract and let's move on. And then somewhere along the line, we saw that trend of the intersection of hyper-connected businesses and every business process being computerized now. And also ransomware threat actors sort of professionalized.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a new era in risk. And unfortunately, because we don't have that long tail of experience with loss data for this environment, what's happened is the insurance industry is we're reacting. We're doing the best we can to apply a lot of our long, our data science and our modeling and we need to be stable. We're inherently risk averse as an organization or as an industry, even though we take risk on, we try to do it intelligently. And that's just really hard to do. And there isn't a lot of, let's just put it this way. There isn't exactly a natural talent pipeline that feeds from, I worked in IT and security to I'm underwriting insurance.
Right.
So there's a little bit of collision of two cultures here while we really figure this out. And over time, that will become a more mature intersection. But right now, this is all preamble to say the genesis of these cyber ready calls is that as the environment has gotten more volatile in the last 12 to 18 months, the underwriting timeline has compressed, the standards have gone up and the price has gone up. And so we're frequently having this conversation where 2 years ago, somebody bought insurance and it cost them next to nothing. And all they did was check half the boxes on the application, send it off and never thought about it again. And now all of a sudden it costs real money and we're asking questions and we're telling them, no, you need security controls that you don't have. Which when you're doing that 30 days before their insurance policy renews, it's not really enough time to react. So the genesis of the cyber ready call is to get out ahead of that. Let's go at 2 or 3 months before renewal, when you have time to deploy some security controls, time to understand what's going on in the market. Let's just make sure people aren't getting blindsided with tough news.
That's awesome. That's and I love the proactive nature of it because from the virtual CISO perspective, sometimes we'll get calls that may or may not be prompted, like say with that cyber insurance, where suddenly they're like, well, we have to put in this multi-factor. We don't know what that is. And if we don't, we can't get our cyber insurance. And by the way, we have to do it in 15 days. And it's like, wait, whoa. But I like something that you said about the lack of, and I might not be paraphrasing this right, but the current lack of natural flow of talent from like information security into there, because in InfoSec, there is more of a mindset to approach InfoSec as risk management. And that's been going on for quite some time. But, we've done these really pretty and in some ways not terribly useful heat maps. I mean, when you do a multiplication of numbers that have no values behind it, it's not really doing any math. It's fake math. But there's been a push in information security to do more quantification of risk based on cost and cost exposure, fair factor analysis of information risk being one of the more popular ones. So I almost can see that there's like a convergence here coming from both sides. What do you see as like, though, you mentioned ransomware. I was actually just talking earlier this morning on the Friday audio only podcast that we record and put out, talked a little bit about Conti is still out there and causing issues and all that, the ransomware du jour. That's certainly a major risk for small and mid-sized businesses. But what other things do you see out there? Or would you say ransomware is the largest one right now?
Ransomware is certainly the largest one right now. It has been for the last few years, depending on what data set you see. There's roughly a 500% increase in ransomware frequency, an actual like insurance loss caused by ransomware from about end of 2020.
You said a 500% increase?
Yeah, roughly 500%. And, if you look at one study versus another, it'll tell you different things. There is no like, single source of truth in this industry. Same challenge with security. But a lot of perspectives definitely trending in the same direction. Point is, it's dramatically higher now, just over a few years. Mm-hmm. And that has almost singularly consumed insurance underwriting for the last, say, 18 months, because it has become so prolific, and not just the frequency, but the actual ransom demands have gotten bigger. On top of that, we're seeing I think we're getting more acquainted with the sort of knock-on damage to ransom. A lot of times the ultimate financial fallout of a successful ransomware attack, paying the ransom isn't the biggest piece of it. It's lost revenue. It's all the time that you spend having to rebuild your systems. Now you can't trust everything. So everything needs to be audited. You need to burn it all down and rebuild from clean. It's hugely disruptive.
And there's the reputational risk as well, too, because certainly you don't want to have your name in the newspapers. And well, here I'm dating myself, in the news. I don't know. Do they still have newspapers? So ransomware, a lot of the times a vector in is through a compromised account. And obviously two-factor can mitigate that. But on the flip side, I was on a Twitter thread earlier that the question was, how can you help convince somebody who's an employee that they need to not share their password if they're using multi-factor? Because they say, well, I got multi-factor, so why do I even care about the password? And that kind of begat a whole conversation about layered security and all of that. But from your perspective, again, you're on the insurance side, we're on the practitioner side. What can we do better to help with modifying? Maybe that's almost too Orwelling in there, but helping to raise awareness for employees to bring down their risk. What are some things that you think that maybe we can help so that there isn't as much risk to the insurance side for a claim?
To me, I'm going to focus on the 60,000 foot view here, because there are certainly a lot of technical challenges that are pretty consistent, repeated throughout different organizations that contribute to a lot of risk. Like, figure out your assets and patch them. There you go. You've eliminated a lot of risk, and a lot of organizations simply fall down there. But I think there's a higher level picture or problem, and that is, we have spent, think about the trajectory of the sort of IT-ification of business, right? We spent, from right after World War II, right up through really the ransomware outbreak in somewhere between 2015 and 2017, where we were primarily taking manual processes and inserting computers, replacing them with computers, and then and networks, then the internet, now mobile devices, now mobile internet. And we've got this slow burn over decades where I'm not gonna demean people who were working security back then and say it didn't matter, but it was not what it was today.
No.
And I think we saw this break just 5-7 years ago, where all of a sudden we have to seriously put resources and thought into managing the risk that has been generated by the last 60 or 70 years of putting everything on a computer and a network. And unfortunately, the leadership at a lot of organizations, because IT can be so technical, so steeped in jargon, so arcane to them, it's always had this idea of that's an IT problem, that's an IT problem. And this concept of, no, this is a serious business problem, and our business is actively under attack, and our revenue streams are at risk in a very significant way, is a new mindset that we need to make sure that the folks holding the purse strings and assessing risk at the top of the organization really understand. And because that drives all the investment, that drives the thinking, that drives the resources for how do you formulate a security strategy that can actually work for your business.
I'm so glad you said that, because there are so many times when people will refer to all of this as IT security. And once you start there, you are immediately discounting maybe 80% of what is really involved as far as the risks go and all that. And I like to say that words matter, and being precise with words matter. And one of my soapbox items is that, so we have IT security, cybersecurity, and information security, and everybody thinks that each one means something else. I personally prefer the term information security, because ultimately, what are we trying to protect and what are we trying to keep flowing? That's information. But that evolution story is interesting because of the fact, yeah, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but that the internet, the way that it started, it was designed to be secure, but for a different part of the triad. It was designed, TCP/IP was designed for high availability. We never thought about like anything else, as far as we wanted to make sure that the bits and bytes got through. It was never about like stopping bits and bytes until we started to get that flip in the later 90s and so forth. So it's a very stressful field. And one of the things that I always like to hear as far as stories go is, because it's important to decompress. It's important to have balance, I think, in this industry. What do you do to maintain that sort of sense of balance in your life?
I have quite a few different hobbies that I engage in. Most recently, I invested in a Komodo grill, so I'm trying to figure that out. It's well, I got a big green egg. There are a few different brands of them, but it's literally, it looks like a big green egg. It's a few hundred pounds of ceramic, and it's for doing, that low and slow cook, making a brisket that you start at 3 a.m. and don't eat till 8 p.m. It takes some time and attention and practice to get good at it. So I like throwing myself into that. I'm a huge nerd about coffee. I have a very specific setup in my morning ritual for how I prepare it, with the pour over and the scale with the timer and all that kind of thing. I've been a lifelong gamer, though I don't do it so much anymore. It used to be kind of a relaxing thing. I recently picked up Elden Ring, which is the opposite of relaxing, but for anyone who knows it, they will absolutely appreciate that. It's one of the
I have no idea what that is.
Oh, it's brutally hard. Like, you fail more often than you win, but it is a great information or focus sink.
So if you have something in your off time that's more stressful than InfoSec and cybersecurity, then that cybersecurity seems less stressful. Is that the theory?
It's something like that.
I
and I will say, on my side of it, yeah, there's stress, but from the insurance perspective, we are utilizing the law of large numbers, right? There is certainly urgency when we have an insured who has some sort of data breach, ransomware, whatever it might be. When we get a claim, we have to move fast. It's the same sort of firefighting that we have to do, on the incident response side, more engineering focused roles. But the upshot is we see a lot of them, because we see a lot more accounts that don't have them. At least that's the case if you're underwriting effectively. So it's a little bit of a different proposition. And I will say, compared to some friends who are still working in SecOps and some folks I know who are, actually still CISOs, I think my job's got the better end of the stress bargain there.
So, future plans? Do you plan to maybe enter back into the CISO world, or stay in insurance, or start up another MSP?
Like it. Yeah, I kind of like it on the insurance side. I'm not sure I see myself here forever. I'd love to get into something more, or at least more far-reaching and policy-oriented. I feel like both the insurance and the security but engineering sides tend to be a little bit lost in the details sometimes, and we really collectively suffer from a lack of people putting a lot of this together at the highest levels. But at the same time, I really like insurance. It's been a good industry for me. I know it's a little bit invisible, can be a little bit mystifying from the outside, but I would certainly recommend this is a viable career path for anyone who's in incident response or a CISO who's looking, how can I, maybe this is a little too stressful. Maybe I'm tired of the fire drill all the time. Take a look over here. We can always use more security talent.
Well, that's awesome. I really appreciate your perspective. Appreciate you coming on with us today, and we'll have to hook up again and get some tips on brisket and coffee. So, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your time, and for everybody else, stay secure.